Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what time you're watching this. Welcome to Millennium High School's Athletics Winter Sports Parent Meeting. I'm Mr. G, or Mr. Gordillo, the athletic director here at Millennium High School. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I think it's very important that we all understand the expectations and protocols so that your son or daughter can have an awesome sports season and you can enjoy it as well. Um, so I just want to give you a quick background information about myself. As I said, I'm Mr. Gordillo, or Mr. G. I am in my ninth year here at Millennium High School, the eighth as the athletic director. Prior to that, I was athletic director at another high school here on the west side. So I've been doing the athletic director stuff for about 13, 14 years now. So I'm excited to work with your son or daughter this winter season and looking forward to meeting you and seeing you on the sidelines. I'm going to move through these slides as quickly as possible, but I do want to make sure that I give you all of this valuable information, as I said earlier, so that you can have a great sports season without any issues for your son or daughter. So I want to start with talking about our trainers. So here at Millennium High School, we have two athletic trainers. We have Miss Barlow, who is a teacher on our campus. She teaches sports medicine classes during the day, and then she is our part-time trainer after school. So she is there to help with rehab, with our student athletes, diagnosing student athletes when they have injuries, as well as doing game coverage, depending on how many events we have in a night. And then we have Miss Walkup is our full-time athletic trainer. She works for Banner and is contracted at Millennium High School. She's been with us for 2 years now, as Ms. Barlow has as well. They're both phenomenal and have great rapport with our student athletes. We look forward to them servicing our student athletes again. You can see their contact info on there. I do want to go through a few protocols when it comes to our athletic trainer. Obviously, we hope everybody stays healthy during the winter sports season, but the reality is in sports, sometimes there's injuries. So if your son or daughter does have an injury, we do ask that you allow our trainers to evaluate them and kind of guide you. You know, they have contacts with people who specialize in whatever services they may need, and sometimes they're able to get student athletes seen faster. You always reserve the right to see whoever you'd like. But ultimately, it is our athletic trainers who have the final say on clearing students to return to action. So if your son or daughter receives an injury, please contact Ms. Barlow or Ms. Walkup to set up an appointment or a time for your son or daughter to be seen and evaluated by them. And then they will create a plan to help them return to play. That plan could include seeing an outside physician, and then you yourself also could take your son or daughter at any point to see an outside physician. Please understand that if you see an outside physician, our trainers need to receive written guidance for them on what the doctor is saying they can or can't do, and then we have to follow that. We also, once you see an outside doctor, we need to receive written clearance from that outside physician stating that they are cleared to return to whichever sport it is that they play. That documentation would go to our trainers. You can also send it to myself if you would like. But until we receive that information, our trainers will not be able to clear once a doctor has kind of, they've created the plan for your son or daughter. And sometimes that plan comes back and they say that they're cleared, and our trainers may not feel comfortable and may need additional time or feel like your son or daughter needs additional time. And ultimately, again, it is up to our trainers when your student athlete is cleared to return. If they do decide to hold them out longer, it could be to get them back conditioned so that they're not at risk for re-injury when they return. But please understand that that's never from a place of, hey, we just want your son or daughter to miss more games. That's just not the case. We want to get them out there and for them to have a full season as well, but we want them to be able to do that healthy. So if you have any questions along the way when it comes to injuries, our athletic trainers info, again, is right there. Next, let's talk about academic eligibility. So we believe in the term student athlete. Student comes before athlete for a reason. So they need to be successful students in order to have the opportunity to be athletes here at Millennium High School and in the Agua Fria Union High School District. There are two parts to our academic eligibility policy. This first part is the credits earned. So a student athlete has to be on track to graduate based on their grade level in order to compete in extracurricular activities and athletics here in our district. So freshmen, they've just come to our campus. It's their first year here. They haven't had the opportunity to earn credits yet. So there's no credits earned component for freshmen. So if your son or daughter is a freshman, you don't have to worry about anything here, but you do need to be aware of moving into future years. So if a student athlete is a sophomore, they must have earned at least 4 credits to be eligible. If a student athlete is a junior, they must have earned at least 10 credits to be eligible. If a student athlete is a senior, they must have earned at least 16 credits to be eligible. So those numbers aren't numbers that are just randomly chosen based on grade level. That's the number of credits based on their grade level that puts them on track to graduate on time. We love having your son or daughter here. We love having them compete for us. But the reality is high school is a temporary phase that's designed for us to prepare them to eventually graduate and move on. And we want them to do that on time. And so if somebody is not on track to graduate on time and are deficient in the credits they need at their grade level, then they are considered academically ineligible as a result of that. So they cannot compete until they have earned the required amount of credits for their grade level. There is a one-time waiver. So if your son or daughter is credit deficient, then you can apply for a one-time waiver. Again, that can only be used one time in their 4 years with us. That would be filled out with their counselor. They would create a plan to get them back on track to graduate. And ultimately, that's up to our principal, Ms. Bundy, on whether or not she signs that waiver and grants it to your son or daughter. So just filling out the waiver, it's not a guarantee. That's a case-by-case basis. But again, if they are credit deficient, there is the potential opportunity for them to receive a waiver, but that can only be done in their one time in their 4 years here at Millennium High School. We are currently checking each rostered student athlete for the winter to see if anybody is credit deficient. If they are, I will meet with them. I will connect them with their counselor, and then we will make contact with you as the parent as well, so you understand where we're at and what the plan is. The second part of our academic eligibility has changed. So if you're somebody who's had a student athlete here last year or years before, this part of the academic eligibility policy is different. Okay, so we made some adjustments based off of the way that grading is done now and trends that we see. The idea of academic eligibility is to make sure that a student is performing in the classroom, and as education changes, you need to be aware of policies and see does that fit the way that we're doing grading and we're educating now. So we made a slight change. So that change is that now grades, academic eligibility based off of grades, is determined at the end of each grading period. So every 9 weeks is the end of an official grading period. So the first quarter, end of first quarter, end of second quarter or semester, the end of the third quarter, the end of the fourth quarter. So right now for winter athletes, the end of the semester, so once they go on winter break, that's the end of the semester. So any student athlete that has a failing grade at that time would become academically ineligible for 1 week. In the case of break, while they're on break for 2 weeks in the winter at the end of the first semester, there's no opportunity for them to make up assignments or do anything. So they would remain eligible over the break. So if there's a tournament that your son or daughter is supposed to play in for their sport, they're eligible to play during that time. Once school resumes that first week, they would be ineligible. We would recheck grades that Friday, the first week back. And if they're passing all their classes, which they should be because it's the first week of the semester and grades start over each semester, then they would regain eligibility that Saturday. If your son or daughter ends up in that position, you will receive an email from me that would include the dates, the time period, so you would have all that information at your disposal and be well aware of the time frame and what's happening. So the semester is a little bit different because of that 2-week break there. That should take them through the end of the winter season. So the only point in the winter season where they could become academically ineligible for grades would be the end of that first semester. And again, we would notify you if that's the case. The next thing is, so in our school district, we have a participation fee. So all student athletes who make one of our teams are required to pay a participation fee. That participation fee is due before the first game. So any student athlete who has not paid the participation fee before their first game is ineligible to play in games until they pay the fee. The fee is $100 per sport. However, if the student athlete is on qualifies for free or reduced lunch, then it is a $50 fee. So now that we're receiving rosters for the winter sports because tryouts have ended, the bookstore will charge their account. We'll send an email with instructions on how to pay that. That can be paid online. That can be paid in person here in the bookstore. And it's checked each day. We're updating to mark student athletes off as they pay. So again, it would have to be paid before the first game in order for them to participate in that game. And until it's paid, student athletes are not eligible to participate in games. If you have questions along the way, if you believe that there is some sort of a hardship, you can contact me directly, and we can speak about your individual case. But again, it is $100 per sport, or $50 if the student athlete qualifies for free or reduced lunch, and it needs to be paid before the first game. Transportation. So our school provides transportation to and from all sporting events or any type of event at Millennium High School. It is a school event that doesn't take place on our campus. Students are required to ride to and from all school events on school provided transportation. So student athletes cannot drive themselves to games or tournaments or anything like that. They can't, at the end of a game, say, hey, I'm going to catch a ride with my friend or my parents. They need a ride to and from. If there's a unique circumstance or extenuating circumstances for a particular game, you can email me to inform me of that, and we can discuss the possibility. But there is no situation where we would approve a student athlete to drive themselves to or from a game. If there is an extenuating circumstance, we can discuss you as the parent transporting your son or daughter to or from. Again, that would be a unique situation. So, hey, it's my son's birthday, and so after the game, we're going to take them to dinner. It's not necessarily a unique circumstance. That's something that would qualify to do that. Um, if there's a situation where, hey, my son or daughter, they're in dance and they're required to compete or to perform in this show, the end of the semester concert, because that's a grade. Can we pick our son or daughter up for the game to bring them back in time to participate in the dance concert? That would be a unique circumstance because it's academically related, and that's the type of situation. Obviously, I'm sure there are other situations that could potentially come up for your family, and again, you can reach out to me to discuss those. But as a general rule of thumb, all student athletes are required to ride to and from all school events on school-provided transportation. Thank you. Attendance policy. So, totally understand that sometimes students are going to miss class. However, our policy is student athletes must attend at least half of their classes to be eligible to practice or play in games. So we have 6 periods in our school day. That means they would have to attend at least 3 of those classes in order to be eligible to play in games or to practice on that day. If they have early release or late start, we would look at the number of classes that they have, and then we would determine the half day attending for half day based off of that. So again, they're not eligible to practice. They're not eligible to play in games. We are able to track that, both our coaches as well as our attendance office. If you have extenuating circumstances that causes your student athlete to miss more than half the day, then you can contact me individually. So what are things that would qualify for that? Funerals, doctor's appointment, medical situation, dentist, things of that nature. Sometimes there's student athletes that are going on college visits, and then they're not going to get back before the end of the school day. Those would be instances to contact me about extenuating circumstances, and then we could look at approving them to practice or playing games based off of that. Again, you can email me or call me if your son or daughter ends up in that position, but please understand they need to be at school for at least half the day to participate in practice or play in games. So code of conduct. This one is one that is very important. When student athletes, you're you're not just representing yourself and your family, they're representing our school. And when we allow student athletes to participate, we are vouching for that student athlete, saying that this is a person that we believe will represent our school and our district in the right ways, and will conduct themselves accordingly. So our district has an athletic code of conduct. It's in the register of my athlete that you had to sign to get cleared. Both parents and athletes had to agree to that. Sometimes we're rushing to hurry up and get cleared so we don't miss tryouts or we don't miss any practices, and we don't always read thoroughly through it. So I would encourage you to sit down with your son or daughter and read through the athletic code of conduct so you both understand exactly what our expectations are of our student athletes, as well as the potential consequences if our student athlete doesn't meet the expectations of our athletic code of conduct. There's a violation. So I want to talk about what happens if there's a violation. So if there's a violation of code of conduct, then the student athlete, myself, and parent or parents and head coach would have a meeting, a code of conduct meeting. At that code of conduct meeting, your son or daughter will have the opportunity to present their version of events, any self reflections of what they've learned from the situation, as well as anything that they would do differently. Myself and the head coach will have the opportunity to ask questions of your son or daughter. You, as a parent or parents, would have the opportunity to say anything that you would like at that hearing. So let's use a situation where your son or daughter is suspended from school. Okay, the school discipline will always supersede the athletic discipline. So school discipline always takes precedence over any type of athletic code of conduct violation. So once the school discipline has finished, so let's say a student athlete suspended for 3 days for some sort of school infraction. Once the 3 days is up, that's when the meeting would be held for the code of conduct, which again would be the student athlete, parent or parents, myself, and the head coach of that program. Once we have the meeting, there's nothing decided right there on the spot in that meeting. Within 48 hours after the meeting, it becomes my responsibility as the athletic director to make a determination on the outcome of that code of conduct. That can be anything from, you know, reinstatement effective immediately for time already served, in other words, what they already missed as a result of the school discipline, all the way up to removal from the team. That doesn't mean that either of those two are the outcome. That's just a wide range of what we have. So I think it's very important that you sit down with your son or daughter, go through the code of conduct, understand the expectation. There are some things that will result in removal from the team. Those things would be possession of drugs or alcohol, consumption of drugs or alcohol, um, being involved in a fight or an assault. Some people would say, well, why would that lead to somebody being removed? Well, if somebody's, in possession of drugs or alcohol, we can't take the risk of them having that on a school bus, them taking that to another campus, them being under the influence of that. That is a health risk, a safety risk at that point. That could, again, would lead to removal from the team. If somebody's involved in a fight or an assault, acts of aggression, um, a, sports are very competitive, emotions are high. If somebody demonstrates that they're going to be involved in fights or in assaults, then we would question why would we put them in a position where that could happen at a game, that could happen at a practice. So those are things that could lead to dismissal or removal for the team for the rest of that season. Code of conduct only applies to that season. So this is the winter season. So if there's a violation of it, it would apply to the winter season. It wouldn't have any impact on the spring season. That's a different season. We don't believe in permanent penalties for student athletes. So again, please read through the code of conduct so that we're all aware of the expectations. Thank you. Transfers. Some people watching this, your son or daughter might be a transfer. So I like to go through the transfer protocol. Students that have attended another high school prior to enrolling at Millennium are considered transfers. So any student athlete that has at some point been at another high school prior to coming Millennium is a transfer. All transfers must complete the 550 form, which is a transfer form. That is in Register My Athlete. However, not all transfers click on that to complete it. As I go through rosters, I'm looking for transfers, identifying transfers, and then seeing if they've completed the 550 form. Again, that is a requirement. So students that have attended an Arizona high school and then have transferred to Millennium they are required to sit out 50% of the season for any sport that they played in the previous 12 months at the previous high school. So we're in the winter season. So if your son or daughter was at a school last year and they played basketball and are now playing basketball for Millennium, they would be ineligible for the first 50% of the season, PowerPoint games. Students that have transferred more than once, so if it's considered a multiple transfers, then they are ineligible for a full season. So again, it's 50% on the first time transfer, or 100% if they've transferred multiple times. Students who have never attended an Arizona high school, but have transferred from out of state and are now in Arizona attending Millennium, if they've never been at an Arizona high school before and they are residing with the same parent or parents that they did in the previous state or country that they lived in, they are eligible immediately. They do not have a 50% or 100% sit period, because they've never been in Arizona before, or they've never attended an Arizona high school before. So that's in-state and out-of-state transfers. Communication protocol. So throughout this season, you may have some questions, some concerns regarding your son or daughter and the program that they're in. If you have questions or concerns, the correct protocol would be to contact the coach or coaches via email to request a scheduled meeting to address any concerns or issues. Please do not approach coaches before or after practice or before or after games. That's not the appropriate time, for a multitude of reasons. One of which, at that point, the coach is focused on all of the student athletes and preparing for practice or preparing for a game or wrapping up a practice, wrapping up a game. They're not going to be able to focus just on your son or daughter. When you schedule a meeting, then a coach, you and the student athlete are all able to focus on whatever the issue or concerns are of that student athlete and then can work through addressing them. Okay. So again, please do not approach coaches before, after practice, or after games. Send an email to request a meeting to discuss whatever concerns or issues that you have. Now, if you feel like the coach, you know, hasn't addressed the issues or concerns after you've met with them and allowed them time to address anything that needs to be addressed, then at that point you can reach out to me as the athletic director, and I'll be happy to discuss the situation with you. Now, please understand, when it comes to playing time, style of play, philosophy of play, things of that nature, those are not things that I meet with parents about. We hire our coaches. We believe we have some of the best coaches in the state of Arizona, and for that matter, in the country. And we empower them to do their jobs, and we support them in doing their jobs. I'm not an expert in every sport. I'm not at every practice. I'm not at every game. So I don't meet to discuss playing time. I don't meet to discuss style of play, philosophy of play. Those are conversations to have with the coach who's there at every practice and every game, and can give you more information regarding that. The next part of this I want to say is again, everybody's entitled to their opinion. I'm not always going to agree with everything that a coach says or does. I have a daughter who plays sports. I don't always agree with everything that her coaches do. However, they're her coach. You know, she has those conversations with her coaches. I don't. So what I would encourage you to do is be careful of what you say about your son or daughter's coach or coaches in front of them. And the reason why is that coach is working with your son or daughter every day in their sport. They're telling them what their expectations are, teaching them how they want them to play, etc. And they're receiving that in practice, and they're receiving that in games. And then if they come home and they're being told something different from their parent or parents, now that your son or daughter is in a state of conflict, right? I've got my coach who's telling me this, and I want to do what they're going to do so that I can, play for this team and be successful. But then my parents, who I love, are telling me this, and I don't want to disappoint them, and I don't want to let them down. Now that your son or daughter or student athletes are stuck in a tough situation, do I listen to my coach? Do I listen to my parents? What do I do? And so I would just encourage you to be careful, what we say in front of your kids regarding coaches, as well as giving them directions contrary to what their coach is asking them to do in situations. So again, everybody's entitled to their opinion, but I just want to make people aware of sometimes our student athletes are placed in a tough position. Next, I want to talk about officials. Okay, so you can see here on this slide, it says bench bad behavior. That's a campaign through MHS, which is National Federation of High Schools Sports. We subscribe to the bench bad behavior campaign. Okay, so as you can see there, it says respect officials, protect high school sports. There's a shortage of officials in Arizona. There's a shortage of officials across the country. I'm not saying that that's parents' fault. I'm not saying that that's student athletes' fault. I'm not saying that that's coaches' fault. But the reality is that there have been things that have happened that have made people not want to participate. You can go on to YouTube, you can go on to social media, and you can see examples of that. People fighting refs, people cursing out referees, people following them to their cars, putting them in dangerous situations. Um, Here's what I'm going to tell you: we don't tolerate that at Millennium High School. Let our coaches talk to officials about what's happening in the games. If they're not happy with officials, then they speak to me, who then follows the protocols to evaluate officials, talk with the AIA about any concerns that we have. Please do not address officials from the stands. Do not approach officials after the games. Do not approach officials at any point. Do not touch officials at any point. We've been very fortunate at Millennium High School that we have not had those issues, and we want that to continue. I'll be the first one to tell you I don't agree with every call that an official makes. I don't. But there's a way to handle that. And yelling at an official, cursing at an official, approaching the official is not going to change the call. It's not going to get them to give us different calls next time. It's not going to do anything except create a label for our school or for a particular sport. And that travels. And we get evaluated. Every game, officials evaluate our coaches, they evaluate our players, and they evaluate our fans. And our school is given a score, and it's cumulative, so it keeps going throughout the season. And those are things that the AIA sees as well. So again, just please be respectful of officials, even when you disagree. You can quietly be upset. You can talk to the person next to you, things like that. But please do not shout at officials. I would hate to see an official eject anybody from a game and then you not be able to watch your son or daughter play that game. And I would hate to be able to have to tell you that you can no longer attend sporting events here at Millennium High School as a result of something that happened with officials. So I hope that doesn't happen to anybody. I trust that it will not, as it hasn't happened yet. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say that we need to be respectful of that and that we won't be able to have games if we don't have officials. I want to thank you for your time and watching this video and answering those questions. I really appreciate it. I hope your son or daughter has an awesome winter season. I look forward to seeing you at games. Please feel free to stop by and say hi if I'm at a game. Love to talk with you. Love to hear about your son or daughter's experiences here at Millennium. Thank you. Have a great day, and we will see you soon.